Good afternoon, everyone, and happy International Day of UN Peacekeepers. As you know, we have a number of events to commemorate today, and as part of that, I'm joined today by the Undersecretary General for Peacekeeping Operations, Jean-Pierre Lacroix, who is immediately to my left. Next to him is Harjit Singh Sajjan, who is the Canadian Minister of National Defense, and to his left is the Undersecretary General for Field Support, Atul Khare. And they're here to brief you on the occasion of the International Day of UN Peacekeepers. They'll all make some brief remarks before we go to questions. And we will start with the Canadian Minister of National Defense, Harjit Singh Sajjan. Please, the floor is yours, sir.
Gary, thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to just open with saying, on behalf of Canada, our deep condolences to the people of the United Kingdom for the absolute horrific and tragic event in Manchester. Undersecretary Generals, ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored to be here in New York City to help mark the International Day of the United Nations Peacekeepers. Peacekeepers are now in greater demand than ever before. They deploy to increasingly complex environments, and they face increasingly complex tasks. Collectively, we need to better orient the United Nations to meet these challenges. That is why when I spoke with Undersecretary Lacroix earlier today, I conveyed Canada's support for the Secretary General's ambitious and multifaceted reform agenda. The steps the Secretary General is taking to put conflict prevention at the forefront of peacekeeping efforts are essential to modernizing the United Nations and the UN and UN peacekeeping. I delivered a similar message when I had the opportunity to speak at a breakfast meeting hosted by the International Peace Institute this morning. And today's commemoration ceremony at the UN headquarters only reinforced my conviction. As the wreath was laid, I was reminded that the best way we can honor the dedication and courage of our peacekeepers is to take up their cause with renewed determination, to invest in peacekeeping as a means to making a positive difference in the world. Canada is committed to this collective effort. As part of the review of our national defense policy, we consulted with Canadians across the country last year. Time and again, they told us that they value peacekeeping. They recognize the role peace operations play in protecting our collective security. They want Canada to engage in missions that have a meaningful impact in the lives of people most in need. For this reason, we pledge to increase our engagement in peacekeeping and are finalizing how we can best do that. It is also why we established the Peace and Stabilization Operations Program at Global Affairs Canada last year and committed to $450 million between 2016 and 2019. The program heads Canada's stabilization efforts in fragile and conflict-affected states and enables us to work in close collaboration with the United Nations and other partners to advance peace and security around the world. Finally, it is why Canada is so delighted to host next United Nations Peacekeeping Defense Ministerial. I am pleased to officially confirm that the ministerial will take place in Vancouver, British Columbia on November 14th and 15th of this year. These 2 days will provide an exceptional opportunity for countries around the world to come together to strengthen partnerships, improving planning and performance in peacekeeping, and support the United Nations in realizing its reform agenda. Our ambitious set of objectives for the forum includes generating new and smarter pledges and taking stock of the current contribution by member states, advancing innovative training and capacity building initiatives to improve the United Nations uniform capabilities, integrating gender perspectives in all aspects of peace operations, and fostering integrated approaches to the prevention of conflicts, including early and rapid deployment. So Canada looks forward to welcoming the international community to Vancouver in November. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lacroix.
Good afternoon, Minister, dear Atul. Thank you very much for being here. Minister, we're really happy and honored that you have joined us today for this Peacekeepers Day. It's a very solemn day. It's an opportunity to express our gratitude to the dedication to sacrifices of more than 120,000 peacekeepers who continue to serve in our 16 peacekeeping missions across the world. And it's, of course, a special opportunity to pay tribute to the 117 peacekeepers, both military, police, and civilian, who have lost their lives in the line of duty last year. And I should also remind you that we've had already 30 peacekeepers who have lost their life this year. So we do express our condolences to the troop contributing countries, to their family, to their loved ones. And our sacrifice is a motivation for us to continue and to enhance our efforts to make peacekeeping better, more efficient, better equipped to serve the population and the country where we are deployed. And I'm grateful for the support that your country minister is bringing to peacekeeping, both the political support as well as the support in capacity, the support in assistance, in know-how. I think your commitment to host the next summit dedicated to peacekeeping at the end of this year in Vancouver is an indication, is an additional reflection of this great commitment by Canada. And it's a particularly timely opportunity. The Secretary General has expressed his vision for the how we could continue improving peacekeeping. And we have a lot of items to work on together. And it ranges from making sure that we do our utmost to support political processes, because peacekeeping has to rely on viable and credible peace processes. And conversely, our operations are there to actually support these processes. And the Secretary General is very, very much committed to being engaged in helping those processes. But apart from that, we also have to make sure that our peacekeeping operation should evolve, and their mandate, in their format, to be consistent and pertinent to so that the means that we deploy on the ground are always consistent with the needs on the ground. So this is an effort that is required from us. This is also a responsibility of the Security Council. It also has to do with our ability to evolve quickly on the ground, and therefore it has to do with the rules and procedures of the UN in terms of human resources, in terms of budget and procurement. And you know that the Secretary General is also committed to engage in reform in this area. The issue of continuing our effort to make sure that our peacekeeping operations are better equipped, better reactive, better informed is also absolutely key. And I think there again, countries like Canada have a lot to bring, and we look forward to that. And finally, two issues that are essential, and you mentioned them, Minister. Partnership. We cannot succeed if we don't work in close partnership with stakeholders, regional countries, regional, sub-regional organization, partners such as the European Union, Canada, and other. And everywhere we succeed because we have a solid and efficient partnership. And in addition to that, there are situations where peacekeeping is not the adequate response. And therefore, regional organizations are better equipped to do peace enforcement or counterterrorism. I think another challenge will be that we will have more and more to work in settings where different partners are intervening. The upcoming deployment of G5 Sahel force in the region of Sahel in cross-border to tackle cross-border situation in the vicinity of Mali will be, I think, a test where we will have to combine the action of the United Nations, the European Union, the Malian Armed Forces, Operation Barkhane, as well as G5. So we have to be creative. We have to be interactive, and we have to make sure that we optimize all these great contribution to peace and security. The last thing that I would like to mention is the crucial importance of increasing the number of female staff in our operation. To us, it's really a question of efficiency. Gender parity is very important, but even more important is the fact, widely recognized, that the more female staff we have in our peacekeeping operation, the more efficient we are in interacting with the population and creating better conditions to achieve our goal. So with this, we'll conclude, and thank you for your attention. And I'm sure my dear friend Atul will add quite a lot to these comments. Thank you.
Yes, please.
Honorable Minister of National Defence of Canada, Honorable Mr. Sajjan, my dear friend and colleague Jean-Pierre, it is sad that Peacekeepers Day has now become a stark reminder of the dangers and challenges that we continue to confront as we deploy in some of the most hostile, volatile, dangerous and austere environments that can be found. The fact that 117 of our colleagues laid down their lives is a matter of pride, but also a matter of great sadness for all of us. 23 of them were civilian peacekeepers. And in fact, today morning, my deputy, ASG Lisa Buttenheim, accepted the Dag Hammarskjöld Medal on behalf of those fallen civilian peacekeepers with a great deal of sadness in her heart. I therefore take this opportunity to call upon all countries, but particularly the host countries, to undertake greater efforts to ensure the safety and security of our peacekeepers, our colleagues. And I wish to recall that an aggression or an attack on a peacekeeper is a war crime. And we will take action against those who commit such war crimes. Though, of course, we will also continue to make better efforts towards enhancing the safety and security of the persons who deploy under the United Nations flag. The demand for blue helmets remains high. And as my dear friend Jean-Pierre mentioned, we will be unable to fulfill the demands which are placed on United Nations peacekeeping without the partnerships that we enjoy from all the member states of the United Nations, the host countries, the troop contributing countries, the police contributing countries, and of course those who contribute with financial resources, and finally those who contribute in an ideological sense, giving us better ideas and better initiatives to undertake for the future. In this regard, I want to welcome Honorable Minister of Defense, Mr. Harjit Singh Sajjan, and through him, thank Canada for its support to United Nations peacekeeping over the years and its renewed commitment, including through hosting the next ministerial meeting in Vancouver in November, as he just indicated. Of course, Canada is not alone in its strong commitment to peacekeeping. At the last United Nations Peacekeeping Defense Ministerial meeting in London, 61 nations reaffirmed that, and I quote, peacekeeping is an indispensable part of the international community's response to threats to international peace and security. End of quote. I am grateful for this commitment, which has been jointly expressed by all the countries together. I just wish to make 5 quick points with relation to my department, whose basic endeavor is to support peacekeeping operations succeed through support solutions that are rapid, effective, efficient, and responsible. First, peacekeeping is effective. Over the years, nearly 70 missions have left a legacy of stability in countries spanning from El Salvador to Namibia to East Timor, the last one where I had the opportunity and privilege to serve for close to 7 years. Very soon, missions in Côte d'Ivoire, Liberia, and Haiti will close down, having achieved the tasks that were mandated to them by the international community through the Security Council. So first, peacekeeping is effective. Second, the peacekeeping is cost-effective. We are carrying out new and expanding tasks within existing or even less resources. We deliver value for money. Current peacekeeping budget of $7.8 billion supports 16 operations, 1 regional center, a logistics base, and the deployment of over 113,000 personnel. And in addition, we support the 22,006 authorized uniformed AMISOM personnel, the African Union personnel in Somalia, along with 595 civilians which are authorized for that African Union mission. And despite continuing demands for new or expanded intervention by the UN, real gains have been made in recent years in reducing the peacekeeping cost through efficiencies. Adjusted for inflation, the cost of UN peacekeeping to member states today is 17% lower in 2016-17 than it was in 2008-2009, when, of course, measured as cost per capita of deployed uniformed personnel. Third, peacekeeping is evolving. We are attaching the highest degree of importance to performance indicators. Both Jean-Pierre and I have been working on this. Fourth, we are ensuring that we do no harm, and the environmental management effort, which is being led by my department in close cooperation with the Department of Peacekeeping Operations, is a testimony to that. And finally, I think we are doing much better to combat any abuses, particularly sexual exploitation and abuse, with an emphasis on victim-centric approach, prevention, accountability, and transparency. And I'm convinced that working together, we will succeed in bringing peace, security, development, rule of law, and respect for human rights to all those countries whose populations appallingly pay the price of conflict and war. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'll now open the floor up for questions. If you can all please identify yourselves to our speakers and specify to whom you're addressing your questions. Melissa.
United Nations Correspondents Association. Thank you very much to all of you for coming here today, taking the time to speak to us. My question is for Minister Sajjan. You once again announced what was first announced last August, the financial contribution, troop contribution that Canada is prepared to make. It was made again at the London Ministerial last September and many times since. And I think you must have been made aware that there is a growing sort of a fatigue or criticism towards Canada about the length of time it's taking to actually announce where these troops and where this money is going to go. So I was wondering if you could please respond to that. And also, some are, again, questioning the appropriateness of Canada announcing that it's hosting this peacekeeping summit before actually announcing or without an actual solid contribution in the field or a significant contribution in the field. And if you could answer that as well, I'd be grateful.
No, absolutely. No, thank you for the question. One thing I just want to reiterate also what the Prime Minister has also emphasized. Canada is committed to peace support operations and the important work that the United Nations does. We have outlined our commitments of what we are able to do. But we also have to understand that when we talk about conflict, Canada does have tremendous experience in dealing with conflict, not just from the past, but also recently as well. We work in other coalitions. When we make a plan to make a contribution, this is not just about checking the box. We need to make sure that we have the right plan, have the right discussions moving forward, because we want to make sure that we provide a meaningful contribution. And these are not just buzzwords. I've seen where you can have a very quick contribution, and it sounds all great, but it may not have the impact on the ground, especially when a nation, any nation, sends its men and women, both in uniform and non-uniform, and police officers into harm's way. And that's what this is. You're sending them into conflicts, into harm's way. We want to make sure that they're going to provide a meaningful contributions, plus also the complexities of conflict. I'm actually very encouraged by the dialogue that we're also having and talking about an integrated approach. This is not just strictly about military providing support. We need to look at development. We need to look at the political dynamics, capacity building as well. And that's what we're doing, making sure that we have the right conversations. So when we provide and make the announcement of where we're going, we're also going to be talking about how we're going to be doing it, but most importantly, of why. And that's something that we have done in previous missions, and we'll continue to do that as well. And I look forward to making an announcement at the appropriate time.
That's I had a follow-up question as well, which was the appropriateness of Canada hosting this peacekeeping summit or announcing it before announcing its contribution. And I'm wondering if you could answer that. And also, since you are hosting this conference in November, does that mean that, would it be fair to say that we can expect that peacekeepers will be on the ground by the time the conference comes around? And if not, why not?
I think also we shouldn't also just look at it from peacekeepers being on the ground. This is about when we make the announcement. It's not just about Canada making an announcement. This is about Canada working together with all the other partners as a collective plan towards a problem. I've said it many times. This is not the peacekeeping of the past. We have looked at it strictly sometimes from a military standpoint. We need to look at the political situation. We need to look at the dynamics. We need to look at the business community. We need to understand the conflict, because it's only through that proper understanding that we're going to be able to develop the right plan. And some of the reform initiatives that are also going on, how does Canada actually contribute to that? So this is about making sure that we get this right. And I've seen far too often where we have made contributions that have been made, but it hasn't had the same impact. We want to make sure that our integrated or comprehensive whole of government approach that Canada offers up is going to provide that impact, not just for the mission, but for the region as well.
I'm sorry. My question wasn't answered.
I'm sorry. We only have so much time.
Will Canada have peacekeepers on the ground?
I'm sorry, Melissa. Let's move this around. Majid?
Thank you, Farhana, and thank you for the briefers. I would like to take, this is Majid Ghali from Rodao Media Network. I want to take this as an opportunity to ask Mr. Defense Minister about the fight against ISIS. And my first question is, the operation in Mosul is about to finish, and ISIS will probably be, the major cities will be out of ISIS fighters very soon, and they will be defeated in Iraq. Will Canada still support the Iraqi forces after the ISIS was defeated? Is there any plan for post-ISIS military assistance for the Iraqi forces? And my second question is more difficult one, as it's about the long-term impact of your military training and the weapons that Canada sent to the Kurds in Iraq. They intend to take serious step of independence from Iraq. How Canada think and feel about those weapons to be used by the Kurds to achieve their dream of independence, which is a very crucial question right now. Thank you very much.
The contribution that Canada has made to the coalition, the counter Daesh coalition, we actually, from the previous things that I was talking about, we took a integrated approach, and that's the language that's I think used here, which is very important. We did not just announce the troops that we're going. It's easy to look at the main contribution, which is tripling our troops on the ground, putting our intelligence assets on the ground. But we did not do this in isolation. We looked at the political dynamics, making sure the capacity building support was there. For example, military liaison teams that liaise between the Ministry of Interior, Defense, with the coalition. We looked at a regional development approaches as well. So what we also committed to was also reviewing the mission, not reviewing in terms of how we're going to be staying in, is making sure we have the right resources on the ground to making sure that we're actually contributing well. We made adjustments in the past. For example, we put the Role 2 hospital in northern Iraq afterwards because it was needed for the operations, and we're looking at the changing situation right now to how best contribute. So we're going through the analysis. We extended the current mandate by 3 months just so that we could have more time to making sure that we have the right plan in place, and we'll make the adjustments accordingly, whether it's from a military development and from the political side of things, what type of resources to put in. And when we look at, when you talk about the work that Canada has done in supporting the Peshmerga, we did it from the Iraqi government perspective. We did not do this just to support one group. This is about the Iraqi security forces. We consulted the Iraqi security government, and it was done with their support. The support that we provided was support for what was needed. And Canada will always be focused on making sure that Iraq remains stable within, to making sure that there is long-term peace. In terms of what the country decides for themselves, that is their choice. But Canada is committed to a stable Iraq, making sure that groups like Daesh does not get a foothold. But also, I just want to add into this. We cannot look at those operations without looking at the peace support operations as well. When we, just as much as we talk about the United Nations and my counterparts provide contributions here, my counterparts, we also talk about what we're doing in the coalition. We are looking at the importance of peace operations, because it's not just about preventing conflict, it's about reducing the recruitment of fighters into these organizations. So all our efforts are interlinked. And that's why it is, when we look at Canada making an announcement, we're looking at the broad context of things. We're not just looking at United Nations peacekeeping operations in isolation, because we can't. There's interconnectivity far greater than we've had before. And we need to look at our actions here. How can we be supported here? How can we work with the NGOs? How can we work with the business community? And all interlinked with this. And I was very happy to say that a lot of these discussions we started having in London. And I want to be able to continue these discussions in Vancouver, looking at what's learned, what has worked well, what can we do better. And then when Canada makes a decision, it's going to be part of a wider plan as well. So the conflict in Iraq, yes, we're dealing with that, but we have to look at a much broader perspective, because this is, as nations, we contribute to United Nations peace support operations, we counter a coalition, and also the work that we're doing in NATO as well. It's all interlinked.
Edie?
Thank you very much. Edith Lederer from the Associated Press. Mr. Lacroix and Mr. Carre, you've talked about the importance of peacekeeping, how it's value for money. What impact will a sizable cut by the United States have on UN peacekeeping operations? I'm sure you know that the President's budget proposal was announced yesterday. And also, today in the Security Council, one of the main peacekeeping missions in South Sudan was being discussed, and it's a pretty grim picture. And I wonder whether you have any comments on what the UN could be doing better, what the government needs to be doing better. Thank you.
If I may, I will say a few words and then turn to Atul. I think in terms of the financial resources of peacekeeping, what I want to say is that we have, in any case, irrespective of what the future, will have for us, we have an agenda for making sure that we optimize our resources. And the Secretary General is totally committed to ensuring that we not only have peacekeeping that is fit for purpose, but also that we make the best use of these resources. And that involves terminating operation when they have completed a mandate, which is what we are about to do in Côte d'Ivoire and also in Liberia. That involves transforming our operation, which is something that you will be seeing in Haiti. As you know, the Security Council has adopted a resolution that essentially turns MINUSTA into a smaller operation dedicated to supporting rule of law capacity in that country. In other areas, such as, for instance, Darfur, we may also see quite significant changes and also downsizing. So it's about making sure that we are really not only as efficient as possible, but making the best use of our resources. Now, as far as what the end of the budgetary process in the United States will present as a result, it's still far down the road. It's a lengthy process, a complicated process. It needs to be completed. What I want to say is that the United States have been so far a great supporter of a peacekeeping operation, both in terms of financial contribution, but also in many, many other ways. Perhaps a few. Also, you asked a question on UNMISS in South Sudan. First of all, I think it's important to underline the fact that despite all the challenges, all the difficulties, our peacekeepers are saving lives by the day in South Sudan. There is war, there is famine. Our peacekeepers are operating in very, very difficult conditions. They do not get the kind of support and cooperation they would deserve from the parties, particularly from the government. And what I think is very important is there will be no military solution in South Sudan. So the importance of having a viable, credible process aimed at a truly inclusive dialogue, aimed at reaching a political solution, this is paramount. And Secretary General and our special envoys and SRSG on the ground, they're making their best to support these efforts. But on the ground, in the meantime, our peacekeepers will continue doing their utmost, their level best to help this population.
Carol?
In fact, I'll just add to what dear Jean-Pierre has just said. And I'll make 4 points. First, I must record our deepest gratitude to the United Nations, to the United States, for the support that it has given to the United Nations over the years as the organization's largest financial contributor, both on the regular budget as also on the peacekeeping budget side. And we need to recall and we need to underline the strong financial support which we have received from the United States over the years. Second, as Jean-Pierre said, the budgetary process in the United States is a fairly complex and quite a lengthy one, and I think we would want to see the conclusion of the budgetary process before we make any comment. Third, and this is where I think my role partly as one of the co-chairs of the internal review team on management comes in, and I can assure you that the Secretary General, Mr. Antonio Guterres, is totally committed to reforming the organization and ensuring not only that it is fit for purpose, but that it delivers results in an efficient and cost-effective manner. And of course, we stand ready to discuss with the United States and all other member states how best we can create a more cost-effective organization to pursue our shared goals and values. And last point, of course, in order to implement those shared goals and values, adequate and appropriate resources will continue to remain essential in advancing our work in peace, development, human rights, and humanitarian assistance. And that is the comment which I will make to your first part of the question. On South Sudan, of course, my department continues to work very closely with DPKO to make sure that the Rapid Regional Protection Force can be on the ground as early as possible. Some advanced elements have already arrived, but we do face a challenge of constant hindrance by the local authorities in delaying customs permits, in delaying visas, and I take this opportunity to call on them to facilitate the deployment of the Regional Protection Force at the earliest possible moment. Thank you.
Carol?
I'm Carol Landry with AFP. Agence France Presse. Mr. Lacroix, I want to come back to the Sahel force that you mentioned earlier. Could you bring us up to speed on that? How many troops do you think might be contributed to that? What would be the link with MINUSMA? Are they going to be under UN command? And would the Security Council have to mandate the deployment of that force?
Thank you very much. I think, first of all, the G5 Sahel initiative is extremely important. Why? Because it demonstrates the willingness of the countries of the region to really engage in dealing with the challenges that their region is facing. We are engaged in Mali. There are specific issues related to Mali, but at the same time, the problems of Mali, particularly the challenges to security in Mali, are challenges to the Sahel region as a whole. And therefore, having a G5 Sahel country engage very actively in contributing to these efforts to respond to the security challenges is extremely important. And we fully support the initiative by G5 Sahel. We will do our best to extend concrete support to the G5 Sahel force as it will be deploying. Its mandate is different from MINUSMA's mandate. It is, as some of the leaders in the region put it, it's a force that is intended at going after the bad boys, so to speak, going after the spoilers, engage in counter-terrorism, engage against those groups that are basically undermining the peace efforts that we're supporting. But we will find the way to make sure that we complement each other, together with the Barkhane operation. And of course, while we will continue extending our support to the rebuilding of the Malian armed forces. The concept of operation of G5 force puts an emphasis, at least as a first step, on handling some cross-border security challenges, which is quite relevant, I think, particularly when you look at the security problem in the center of Mali. And therefore, when deployed, that force can really make a difference. And I think on another level, the political level, it also demonstrates that we have a regional engagement to respond to a regional problem. So we're really looking forward to supporting G5. You asked about the numbers. We'll see how, I think the deployment will be gradual. The figure of total of 5,000 has been mentioned, but I think inevitably you will see a gradual deployment of these units on the ground, and again, with the full support of the United Nations. We have seized the Security Council of the expression of support that was expressed by the African Union to G5. Now it will be up to the Security Council to react. We can do certain things in terms of United Nations MINUSMA supporting G5. If we want to go further than what the current mandate allows us to do, then there might be some adjustment, but this is further down the road. And, we're ready to look at how best we can accompany the G5. Thank you.
Matthew.
Matthew Lee, Intercity Press, on behalf of the Free UN Coalition for Access. Thanks a lot for the briefing. I wanted to ask Mr. Kara, you'd mentioned the issue of allegations of sexual abuse in peacekeeping, and you'd also mentioned the U.S. budget proposal. And they've kind of linked the idea, I've heard both at Nikki Haley's confirmation hearing and since, the idea that maybe the UN shouldn't pay contingents who don't discipline their peacekeepers when they're sent back or conduct trials. So I wanted to ask you as an example. For example, it was found that earlier this year that 25 of the Burundian contingent in Central African Republic were charged with sexual abuse and sent back. To your knowledge, what's happened on that? And what's the interrelationship between the human rights situations of the militaries in their home country and their deployment through the UN to other countries? And just for Mr. Lacroix, thanks for being here. I wanted to ask you this. France has had the top post of peacekeeping now 5 times in a row, more than 20 years. And I'm sure there's a benefit from it. And some of your answer may show that the need to coordinate with various French deployments in Africa. But do you think there's any downside to that? Do you think at some point in UN peacekeeping, in an organization of 193 countries and many troop contributing countries, that there may be a need to rotate the position? Or what's the interplay between the upside and the downside of this length of control by one country of the department? Thanks.
Let me begin by the question of withholding of payments. In fact, this is a process which we started about a year and a half ago. And whenever there is prima facie evidence of any peacekeeper, I'm talking about uniformed peacekeepers now, being accused of sexual exploitation and abuse, then we immediately stop any payment due to that particular peacekeeper. Then, after a process of investigation, I'm not saying that everybody is guilty as charged. So after a process of investigation and after a process of judicial trial, if it is found that the case is substantiated, then the amounts which we had withheld, which we had temporarily stopped, these amounts are being transferred with the approval of the General Assembly into a trust fund, which is named the Trust Fund for Assistance to Victims of Sexual Exploitation and Abuse. Of course, there are 4 other countries which have voluntarily contributed to the trust fund, and these are, in alphabetical order, Bhutan, which contributed $10,000, Cyprus, which contributed $1,100, India, which contributed $100,000, Japan, which contributed $200,000, and Norway, which contributed $125,000 equivalent in its national currency. I am not announcing, but we are in discussions with Canada. Thank you very much, Minister, for a very major contribution from Canada to this trust fund, which will be spread over a period of 2 years. We now have a proposal which has been put forward by the Secretary General, which is being considered by the 5th Committee, which indicates, now this was for cases which had been alleged and where substantiation has occurred after a process of investigation and trial. What we are saying is that sometime if the investigations are markedly delayed, then also we should have the authority to undertake the same process. That means suspend the payment and later on transfer the suspended payments to the trust fund. This proposal is under consideration by the 5th Committee, by the UN General Assembly, and I will await the guidance of the wider membership on this matter. Separately, you are well aware that we are trying other mechanisms like DNA testing and so on, which we keep on doing. On Burundi in particular, I have had many discussions with Albert Shingiro, the ambassador here. We have also been in discussions with Burundi. Burundi has welcomed a team of our investigators, Office of Internal Oversight Services, which have visited Burundi because we had been able to do the investigation only from the side of victims, but we had not been yet able to interview the alleged perpetrators. So I'll await the outcome of OIOS joint interviews, and thereafter I will take action. So that is what I can respond to the specific questions which were mentioned by you. I want to mention very strongly, as a multilateralist, as somebody committed to the UN, I do not look at Jean-Pierre as a Frenchman at all. I mean, I'm sorry. I look at him as a UN colleague devoted to multilateralism and globalism. For me, respect for geographical diversity, respect for gender means that we respect each other's intelligence, each other's culture, whatever experience one is bringing to the table, and we completely ignore the other questions which may be surrounding an individual. And that's how I look at it.
But how's the recruitment done? Did they just ask?
Hold on. I'm sorry. Minister Sachan has to leave in a couple of minutes, so we have just time for one last question and then wrap it up. Rohit?
Rohit Vyas, TV Asia. Very brief question for all 3 of you for a brief answer. any thinking on the recomposition of the UN peacekeeping force? For instance, you mentioned volatility around the world and the casualties. Given that fact, reducing or eliminating the civilian component altogether, and then arming better, if they're not armed, the peacekeepers themselves, restricting the force to soldiers, experienced soldiers, and or experienced police forces.
I will attempt a first response, and I would say that, ultimately peacekeeping in the final analysis is not about soldiers. In the final analysis, it is about a comprehensive, holistic, political, economic, and social solution, because wherever, like in East Timor, wherever there's RSG, it is not only a question of IDPs and a question of insecurity on the ground. It is a question of a complete breakdown of societal norms, lack of economic opportunities, lack of proper political interplay between those who govern and those who are in the opposition. And we need to look at that holistic picture. And therefore, while it may look very nice that from a security viewpoint we should reduce the civilian component, but I don't think that is perhaps the best option. Jean-Pierre.
Yes, if I may, very briefly, I think, as you put it, the rationale behind peacekeeping is really to be comprehensive, to associate the political dimension, which is always crucial, paramount, together with the means to advance a political solution and a comprehensive stabilization process on the ground. And it requires sometimes military forces, sometimes a combination of military forces with police, definitely civilian component in many cases, particularly to not only help further political processes, but also help state to rebuild their institution development. Of course, there's quite a huge diversity and variety of peacekeeping, peace operation. I think we will see more of that diversity over time. There's definitely no one size fits all in terms of peacekeeping. You may see cases where having only a military component is actually consistent with the needs on the ground. But I would say that even where we have those cases, which is, in some cases it's about, being between two parties and that helps in the end, that should be helping a political process. So that eventually this military component has to go.
Just very briefly on that, I think it would be a tremendous mistake if we went down that path. The military has learned from hard experiences in conflict that you can't do it alone. The military buys you time, and they do tremendous work, and they're able to bring in a lot of in some high security threat areas, bring in other pieces, but they can't do this alone. So it's usually the military commanders are actually asking for the other resources. So I'm actually so encouraged that finally at higher levels, at the strategic level, nations, at the UN, and even with the other work that I do in multilateral, whether it's NATO or at the Counter-Daesh coalition, we talk about the full integrated approach, because you cannot look at the security threats like this strictly from the military. You need the full approach to be able to do this, but it's our understanding of the situation on the ground is important. So that's why I think we maybe with different type of capabilities where greater intelligence on the ground, but not just strictly intelligence that we've done it in the past, but an understanding of the social fabric of the society so we can make better decisions and put the resources in the right areas. But I am very encouraged that we're finally moving towards an integrated approach. Thank you.
Thanks very much. I believe we're out of time. And thanks to Minister Sajjan and Undersecretary Generals Lacroix and Khare. Thanks very much. And the spokesman's noon briefing will start now.